Let's do, with that, let's bring on some important people to come up, but let me tell you just a little bit about them. The Shepherd's House is one of many organizations helping the homeless. They exist to love people well by creating environments of grace where people are completely accepted for who they are and given the opportunity to embrace significant life changes at a pace that is in their own best interest. They accomplish this, not me, through their relevant services, innovative programs, and dynamic staff. They do so without judgment or pretense because they believe this is how God's transformed lives. The leadership team of John Ryan, Curt, Floski, and Eric Lodise will talk about the new Redmond shelter and other aspects of the situation. All right, I don't think Curt is here.
No, Curt wasn't able to make it, so we have Evan Hendricks here with us.
Okay, thank you guys.
So give an update also.
Well, with that, would you like to come up and speak to us and tell us more about what you're doing here in Redmond?
So I was told that we have to have a hard stop at 1, so I promise that we will not go past that, but we want to give an update on just the latest that we have at the Redmond Center, and also leave plenty of time for questions. So my name is John Ryan, I'm the Director of Operations. I was supposed to be here with Andrew Hooksma, who sadly informed us a few weeks ago that he was relocating to California to go back home with his wife. So you get me today, and I harangue these guys to come and give an update also. So we're very sad to see Andrew go, but happy for them. And I do know when he was here last time, he went through the whole presentation as far as our plans for the Redmond Center and just how that would look and the presentation around that. And so today we're just here to give an update to where things stand and looking ahead to our opening and all that we have hoped for that facility. So I will turn it over to John Lodise, who will give an update as far as the overnight sheltering component of the facility that we've been doing in Redmond, but now we're fortunate enough to have that here under our own roof 365 days a year. And then Evan is our Director of Navigation Center Services, and so oversees all the programs at the Lighthouse in Bend. And so those are the programs and the opportunities that we'll have here in our day center here in Redmond, which will be brand new, and working with the existing service providers, case management, job coaches, and ultimately the goal is to move into permanent housing. So on top of that, we were fortunate through a grant from the city of Redmond, and the county also kicked in some funding also for the completion of the building, and specifically for our kitchen, which is a full-service commercial kitchen. The Coyote Grill had been there previously, and the equipment, some of the equipment was still there, some wasn't. We pretty much had to start over, and so we were very fortunate to have that gifted to us, and it's going to be phenomenal. We do plan at some point to be able to provide up to 100 meals during the day, in addition to the day services there. And so we're going to need a lot of help from the community and volunteers, and we're excited to get this thing going. So, John, if you want to talk about what we've been doing and
sure.
On the emergency side.
All right. So I'm John Lodise, and my involvement in Redmond for about the past 8 to 9 years is I've been helping to operate the Redmond Winter Shelter, which has basically been a shelter without its own home, but we were very, very fortunate to have very generous host churches in Redmond open their doors for us and let us operate a winter shelter basically from November through March. When we started out, I think we started out in the winter of 2014, 2015. We started out really small. We had maybe 8 or 9 people a night stay with us. Over the years, we added churches, Mountain View Fellowship, Redmond Community Church, also joined in, and we have built it up. This past winter, we had 20 to 25 people regularly every night. That's significant. So with the new building, we're really excited because on the one hand, we're going to miss our host churches and kind of going there. It was a special kind of connection that we had in being able to have all those folks work with us and be at their building. But all of that is going to continue. Now it's just going to be our own building that we take care of ourselves. There are going to be a lot of advantages to that. So where are we with that? I expect construction on the overall building to be done by the end of this month. Then we'll have to go through inspections. We have a very large commercial kitchen that John referred to, and we have to have inspections. We have to have the fire department inspect it. We had to put in sprinklers in order to have overnight inhabitancy. The building didn't have any sprinklers. So this winter, even though we owned the building, we couldn't use it for winter shelter because we couldn't sleep people in it overnight without sprinklers. Now we've got the sprinklers. We should have everything ready to go. By about mid-August, we're going to start equipping the building. And by that I mean we're going to put in furniture, we're going to set it up, we're going to get it ready for service. We're looking, the real goal we set for ourselves is we need absolutely to be able to open our doors on November 1 for the winter time. Because winter overnight shelter is critical. It's a life-saving thing. It is also a very important factor if you're looking to make connection with folks who have spent years and years out on the streets or out in camps and just aren't used to coming to shelters, aren't used to asking for help, aren't used to coming to services. Sometimes the wintertime, as horrible as it is, can be a service provider's best friend, because it can be that motivation that gets somebody to say, we really, we can't do this. We can't survive this night. We got to walk through that door and trust those people to take care of us. I'll briefly say, 2014, January 2014, I was somebody who did not have a place to stay overnight, and I had to walk into a police station and ask where I could get help, and he sent me to the Shepherd's House. And I've been there for 9 years now. It can make that little difference, that sense of, I can't do this on my own, I've got to get help from somebody, can really make a tremendous difference in creating that connection that can then lead to serious life change with somebody. So we actually think it's an advantage that we're going to open up as a winter shelter with our new building. We're going to gradually develop it in phases. We eventually want to make it everything that the Lighthouse in Bend is, and Evan is going to share that in a little bit. It's going to be a little bit smaller. So what is the shelter physically going to look like? We're going to have a men's dorm that will fit 24 men, 24 people. We will have a women's dorm that will fit about 12 women. Historically, the 9 years of winter shelter have taught us that the ratio between men and women is about 70 to 75% to 25 to 30%. So we think that that breakdown that we have for the dorm makes sense. Something I'm really happy about is we're going to have 3 flex rooms, we're going to call them, where we can fit 3 different families. And we can either fit larger families of 4 or 5, or maybe a smaller family of a single mother and her child, and they'll have their own privacy. We're going to have showers, we're going to have laundry, 2 very critical services. We had to run the winter shelter for a while without that. Mountain View Fellowship put in some showers this last winter. We were there all winter. People could take a shower every night. They could do their laundry every night. It makes a tremendous difference. Working with the homeless and research has shown when you don't have to worry about where you're going to sleep, when you have access to laundry, when you have access to showers, when you have access to hygiene, your motivation and your opportunities and your chances of getting employment and then from there getting on for a place to live increases quite a bit. We're going to take it further than that. We're going to eventually, we will have a day center. This winter, we know we will be able to, on really, really cold days when people need to be out of the cold during the day to survive because it's so cold, we can use our building for that too. And we're very happy about that because that can make a tremendous difference as well. But eventually, we're going to have computers where people can look for employment, look for housing. We're going to have rooms where people can sit down with service providers, meet with case managers to work toward employment, to work toward all the basics that underlie that. So it's not just a matter of applying for a job. Sometimes they need to get their IDs. Sometimes they have legal records that need to be taken care of before they can move forward in life. Sometimes they have to take care of financial debts that may prevent them from getting their license. All of these underlying basic things can be taken care of, and it's just a step at a time moving people forward. But it really starts with opening the door, especially in the middle of a tough winter, and just basically saying, we're here, we want to care for you. You can do this at your own pace, but we're here to help you get started on that journey. We think is going to be really, really important. And we love the fact that we've got our own building, and we can, it's just going to make our logistics easier. It's going to be the steady, permanent place where people can identify what this is where we go to get help. So really looking forward to that. I'm going to hand it over to Evan, and he can talk about that kind of experience that we've had with the Lighthouse in Bend, in first starting with shelter, and then moving people further along the line and just getting basic services from us. Yeah, hi, Ron.
John, real quick, the plan is though for the summer as far as the cooling shelter, is that will still be at Mountain View to the extent that we get a day of what, 100 degrees or more?
Right. For the time being, yes, we've agreed with Mountain View that we'll help them do a cooling center there. Right. And the reason for that is until we pass inspections, right, we really can't even have people in the building. Like, we could have them stand in the building, but until the kitchen is approved by the county, we can't serve any kind of food in the building. Right. So it'd be really difficult to do a cooling center and say, tell people they can't have anything to eat.
Well, I'm just thinking people coming in, it could be even more critical to have a cooling shelter than a warming shelter or winter shelter, because there's no place to go when it's 110 degrees.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly. And this will, I mean, that's one thing this facility will provide for the extreme heat, cold, and smoke events. 365 days a year, we don't have to figure out where to do that.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I participated in Southern Oregon was getting washers and dryers, And so I think one of the messages should be, especially to folks you wanting contributions from, is, hey, all of that junk that gets left behind is because they have nowhere to wash their clothes. I mean, they throw their clothes away because they can't wash them.
That's very true.
So if you're tired of seeing all this garbage, let's start giving them some opportunity to not be messy.
Yeah,
We're doing some of that already, right? I mean,
yeah, we do some of that at the Lighthouse, and we have the mobile showers. Yeah. We participate, our case managers at the Lighthouse, and Evan can talk more about this, they arrange for some of our guests to take their clothes to the laundry, and they have a little bit of a fund available to do that. We've also partnered with Mission Linen in Bend to take clothes and wash them. So clothes that people left behind that are still usable, we get those laundered, and then they can go back into the donation stream.
Well, and then Mountain View has a shower and laundry facility too.
Right, and they still operate that program even though we're not there as a shelter.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna let Evan.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us here. My name is Evan Hendricks, Director of Navigation Services for Shepherd's House, which means I work primarily with the Lighthouse Navigation Center in Bend, which provides walk-in services for anybody looking to come in off the street and seek help and support. And then in the last couple of months, we've also opened a second low-barrier emergency shelter in Bend, where the old Rainbow Motel used to be. We're calling that the Franklin Avenue Shelter. And there we prioritize families with children and then folks in the community who are medically vulnerable. And right now we've got upwards of 50 individuals staying there, primarily families and children really kind of came out of the woodworks seeking help and support. And the good news that I would want to share with this group is that right now these projects are working. In all honesty, about a year ago when we launched this partnership with the City of Bend and the other providers that we're working with today, there was a lot of question marks around would this suffice as a possible solution or one aspect of the solution that needs to be engaged in order to support folks coming out of homelessness. And the good news is that it's working. In the last year at the Navigation Center alone, we've seen over 1,600 unique individuals, which is a significant portion of the unhoused population in the county. And so that's 1,600 individuals that have said yes to the offer of help, the offer of support, the offer of connection. And then of those 1,600 individuals, we've seen 230 transition on into healthier and more stable circumstances. 93 of those were to permanent housing, and then the other 137 were to some form of transitional housing. And then even this week alone, just got done talking with some of our case management team, and just in the first 3 days of this week, we've seen 7 individuals transition out of either Franklin Avenue Shelter and or the Lighthouse into permanent housing. And so the good news is that it's working. With that, there's always questions around particular stories or whatnot, and numbers are helpful, but we're also storied creatures, and so it's also helpful to have stories. And as of late, we had a story come along with a gentleman that came to us a couple months back, and younger, under the age of 25, and so we connected him first and foremost with Cascade Youth and Family. They are a subsidiary of J but work specifically with youth under the age of 25. And throughout that partnership and kind of the relationship that developed, they were able to get him some support and some housing, and then eventually offered him a job. And now he's working successfully with J as part of their outreach team. And so seeing that kind of come full circle because of something like the Lighthouse. And so for us, the encouragement there is to say what we're currently engaged in is working. We need more, and so we need to continue to create more opportunities, connections, and facilities that can support this kind of work and the folks that are seeking this kind of help. With that, I'd love to just open it up for questions or kind of curiosities.
Are you doing, or will you do much work in Redmond, with the Redmond schools, doing unhoused kids? There's quite a few of them.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So yeah, absolutely. The plan is to partner with organizations like the school district. In Bend, we've had a really successful partnership with fan advocates that work in the schools, and we partner really closely. Anytime a family comes to us with children, that's one of the first phone calls that we make. It's really incredible how many resources are available through our public schools, and so getting them connected with a fan advocate and plugged into that resource is significant. Other questions? Yeah.
We used to volunteer over at the Mountain View and bringing meals and stuff like that. Will it work the same way to where there's a volunteer coordinator for the kitchen for
Yes.
getting meals? Like the
Either
same way?
we'll have a food service manager, position part-time,
Mhm.
and so they'll interface with volunteers and getting donations and things like that.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
tell us about your clients, who you're serving. There's sometimes misnomers about homeless and houseless individuals. Who are you serving? Who are you seeing?
Yeah, really good question. So one of the things that we do is we try to capture as much data as we can so that we can help tell that story to the community. We recognize there's lots of stories and questions, and it's easy to kind of let those things run wild in our minds about who these folks are. But the good news is that we've been able to capture a lot of that. And what we've learned is that of those 1,600 individuals, by and large, it was 250-ish identified as having a mental health challenge, and that was one of our top identifiers for people, a reason why they might be struggling with their household circumstance would be mental health challenges. The next one down from that was physical disabilities. We see a lot of folks who come to us who have had significant accidents or losses at a physical level that have compromised their ability to be gainfully employed and or just to take care of kind of basic needs around the house or an apartment. And then next down from that was actually our elderly population, which is anyone over the age of 55 that comes to us. And we had 170 individuals come to us this last year that are in that population. And that's one of the most heartbreaking situations that we encounter, because folks that have mental faculties present, physically capable, and yet just for one reason or another, life has not worked out the way that they hoped, and they're in a situation where they don't have support from family or significant others to be able to help them avoid that circumstance, and they end up on the street, and some of the most vulnerable people that we work with, for sure. And then down from that, the next category was folks that identify as having struggling with a substance, and that could be alcohol or illicit substances, but we work regularly with folks who acknowledge that they are battling some kind of substance addiction, and we've got a lot of resources and support for that connected to the Lighthouse and Franklin Avenue as well. And kind of those four categories really encompass the majority of the folks that we are working with. There are some folks that come to us that don't necessarily fit into one of those categories, but in general, that's the population that we're looking at.
Do you guys know the proportions of those 4 groups and what percentage is represented of the total by each?
Yeah, the highest percentage was mental health. The next one down from that was the physical disabilities, and then after that was substance use, followed by elderly.
Mental health, you're partnering with the county mental health people.
Yeah.
Getting point-of-time services, real time.
Yeah, Deschutes County's host team, Homeless Outreach Services, has been significant in helping us engage the folks that we're working with at the Lighthouse and at Franklin Avenue Shelter. And the really good news on that end is that they were able to procure some funding and have a position that's going to be joining us actually next week. That'll be a full-time employee embedded in the Lighthouse as a liaison for the county to specifically help folks connect with mental health services and support.
Where do you get most of your funding from?
Most of our funding for the Lighthouse and the Franklin Avenue Shelter has come filtered through the city for our long-term programs and some of our outreach services. Those come from private donations and grants that we procure.
Here in Redmond?
Here in Redmond, it's different. So yeah, in Bend, it's exclusive through a contract with the city for the Lighthouse. Here, we're essentially on our own. So fundraising, grants, things of that sort.
Yeah.
So you offer, extreme weather relief services to get people the help they need, and then the shelter. What does that mean? Is there a limit on how long they can stay in the shelter before, moving on, or how does that work?
Yeah, so back in the old days when we were first doing this, our resources were much more limited, and we didn't want to be too much of a strain on our host churches, so we would set temperature standards, and we'd set them around 25, 30 degrees. If that was going to be the prevailing forecast for the night, then we'd be open, otherwise we wouldn't. As time went on, we even learned to run the Redmond Winter Shelter without a temperature standard and just be open every night. The most exciting thing about this is eventually we're just going to be a 24/7 facility. We're not quite there to do it when we start, but we can be an every night permanent shelter. And that's really important. It's important actually for a couple of reasons. One, folks will have a place to be every night. 2, they won't have to spend their time during the day wondering where they're going to be that night. They can spend their time thinking about other things, other ways to move their life forward. They don't have the stress of that, where am I going to be safe tonight? They can focus their mental energies on how can I do something more positive for myself. And then third, because it's our own building, we can expand it as we want to. So if it's going to be no warmer than 25 degrees all day long, we can open during the day, even if we're not doing that every day right away. We can do it when we really need to. Eventually, we're just going to be a permanent shelter and a navigation center that's operating 24/7, never closing our doors. And that's I think one of the weird things about that is when I first got to our building at the Lighthouse, we had to deal with keys and locking the doors. When you're 24/7, you don't even think about keys anymore because your door is just open all the time. And it's actually a pretty neat feeling.
The other part of my question though was like, how do you, as long as there's space available, that people can be there?
Yeah, there's no time
Not
limit.
like you need to be
There's
gone
some-
in 90 days or 180 days or 10 days or
Yeah,
whatever.
we're not planning that. I know some programs have a set number of days. We're not going to have a set number of days. Yeah.
One quick,
Good.
one-
Yeah,
one
multiple.
quick thought. The facility that I toured in Redding, California had lockers set up so that the homeless had some place to put their belongings while they went out and did things throughout the day. Is that something that's in your plan or thoughts?
There are different ways of handling lockers. Lockers can get a little bit tricky in how you manage them. What we've done at the Redmond Winter Shelter is the guests get their own storage totes, and then we really depend on our monitoring to watch that everything is safe. We've had both systems. We're going to have lockers at the Lighthouse, especially for valuables. I think once we are a 24/7 facility, we are going to have lockers where guests can have their own lock, but we'll just have a master key that enables us to open it if we need to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but you talk in terms of you being a low barrier facility. What does that mean and why is that important?
Okay. The basic definition is the only criteria for being able to stay there is that you can cooperate and be there safely for everybody else. So whatever you did that day, whether you used or whether you drank or whatever you did, we don't do background checks, we don't test people to see if they have anything in their system. They're welcome as long as they can just be with us and cooperate and be safe for everybody else. And that's important because we can't expect people, if people could cure all of those problems before they came to us, you know, why would they need us, or would they need us as much? They need us because they need that starting point. So when you're the starting point, when you're the first door that they walk through, you've got to be able to accept them as they are, or you really can't make progress in helping them.
We're about out of time, but before we go, in addition to monetary individual and business donations, what else can we do as a community to support your work?
Volunteer, spend. So some of our best stories from the Redmond Winter Shelter are about relationships that form between volunteers and guests. And some of the best stories are volunteers explaining how they were completely surprised by what the experience turned out to be and how important it became to them that they become involved with folks like that and the value that the volunteers derive from interacting with these folks. So volunteer, spend time, get to know our guests, hear about what Evan has spoken to is there's a lot of different stories and a lot of different reasons why folks are homeless and a lot of different outcomes and causes. And you can learn about the people that are going through that and get connected to them. When that starts to happen, that's when we really see progress in helping people.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
And we'll have an open house, and you know, I'd love to let you guys know, you know, once we have the details around that, and invite your group.
give it to us. And
Okay.
I think you have Ron's connection, and then we'll
Yep.
definitely send out. This is just a thank you for taking your time to educate us. And we're
Thank you.
going to take a social media picture. I hope that's okay.
That is okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And yeah, I'm just really glad that you came over today. So,
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, guys, before I ring the bell, don't forget to tip your servers. That's super important. And everybody, make it a great day. Make it a great week.
No, you.
Where's my mallet?
We're all gonna do the thing.